Welcome to Authored by Us, a podcast celebrating children's books about characters of color or of different cultural experiences, and the authors who bring these diverse works to life. Each week, we invite you to join us as we turn the pages of these bookshelf gems and hear from their creators who understand that stories of diverse experience truly come to life when authored by us. Here's your host, Zenzi Hodge.
Greetings and welcome back, listeners. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Authored by Us. When I was a kid growing up on St. Thomas, traveling to the U.S. mainland was not always easy or affordable. So oftentimes we would travel to our neighbor to the west, Puerto Rico. We traveled there to see the doctor, to go on field trips, or even attend sporting and theatrical events. And during the summer, traveling to Plaza Las Americas Mall for back-to-school shopping was a must. However, though the two islands were so close and we visited on many occasions, my Spanish was marginal, and this was in the days before Google Translate and Rosetta Stone. So my ability to communicate with someone in Spanish was, let's say, muy mal. Today, my son is in school with multilingual friends, and in some schools, Spanish is not just a subject taught as a special. Some schools are Spanish immersion institutions designed to foster not just a broader understanding of the language, but an inclusion of the culture. But amidst these efforts to embrace the language and culture, what happens when a young boy not only doesn't want to speak Spanish, he doesn't want anyone to know he is of Hispanic descent? This is the story being told by Maritere Bellas in her book, I Have a Secret, Tengo un Secreto. Mari is an award-winning author, parent topic expert, speaker, and host on both podcasts and social media. Her podcast, Mama's 411, focuses on raising multicultural and multilingual children, not just in the United States, but around the world, and provides information, resources, and tools for parents to raise children ready to compete in a global society. Mari combines her passion for writing and her devotion to motherhood to create a diverse platform of resources for parents looking to raise bilingual, multilingual, and multicultural children. Mari was born and raised in Puerto Rico. She is the mother of two young adult children raised with two languages and three cultures, and she lives with her Greek-American husband in Southern California. Thank you for joining us, Mari, and welcome to the show.
Oh, that's such a sweet introduction. Thank you. You and I have been communicating for the last few weeks, so it's so nice to be here with you and have this opportunity to chat about, motherhood and raising multicultural or bicultural children. I love the fact that you visited my island and that you have fun memories of being there. I've been to your island a couple of times and also have fun memories of being in St. Thomas, and I love the people. So I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, on behalf of the people of St. Thomas and the U.S. Virgin Islands and those of Puerto Rico, we're going to say thank you for the shout outs for both of our homes. Puerto Rico Virgin Islands Friendship Day is something that we celebrate in the U.S. Virgin Islands because Puerto Rico is not just our neighbor, they're part of our family. And so on the island of St. Croix, particularly, we have a very large Hispanic population, a large Puerto Rican population. And so Puerto Rico Virgin Islands Friendship Day celebrates that connection between these two islands that are so close together. So from my sister island to your sister island, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you.
So I want to talk with you about your book, I Have a Secret, Tengo un Secreto, because I read it and I really enjoyed it. So can you tell our listeners about your book?
This is how it looks like. So you can see it, the listeners can't, but so yeah, this was an idea that developed over the course of me talking to parents for the last 6-7 years now, since my first electronic book was out in 2014. It's called Raising Bilingual Children. And it's like a guide for busy parents that were in the process or that have been raising children with 2 or more languages. And it was published by Simon and Schuster like I say, as an electronic book. And it kind of like opened the doors for me to, be able to talk to parents about my experience, because now my children were adults, and what I went through. And in the book, there's a lot of stories of families that have raised kids, not necessarily only with Spanish and English, though that was the intention, but there's also stories of parents that are raising kids with Spanish and German, or Spanish and and Dutch. So it's a kind of well-rounded, quick guide that answers a lot of questions for parents about how to do it. And that all came about right when there was all this scientific studies coming out about the bilingual brain, and how all of us are born with a bilingual brain. And that's where kind of bilingualism came like in vogue word. And all of a sudden everybody was talking about it again. Yeah. And parents were getting a lot of good information and being educated on, especially here in the United States, about the significance, the benefits, the advantages of raising children with, more than one language. And so when talking to parents, that question always would come up. It's like, how to do it, what to do about it, how come, what happens when we're in the majority, in an area where there's a majority language like English, for example, which is where my children grew up. They were in an English-speaking world. Everything around them, their neighborhood, their school. I didn't have any resources available like there are today. Parents are super blessed and very lucky today to count on all this technology. I mean, all we do is Google stuff. Well, I was the Google at the time. I would go to the library. I would get all this information. I would talk to pediatricians. I would talk to speech pathologists. I would talk to the experts. And then, like a true journalist, would come back and write about it. My column was published in La Opinion newspaper in Los Angeles for 12 years. So I was offering all that information about balancing the languages and the culture, and try to foster the Spanish, and try to cultivate and preserve the culture. Because just because we were living in an English dominant world didn't mean that we have to leave the Spanish behind, or our culture behind. So since there was nothing out there, I started writing this column, and that's how it all started with my writing. Speaking with the parents, then, it's like, what do I do? He doesn't, he's going to school. He doesn't want to speak Spanish at home anymore. So I started thinking I need to do a children's book. So I concentrated on the 2 parenting books before, right after Raising Bilingual Children. Since it was an ebook, I decided when I was going to book fairs and conferences and talking to parents, everyone wanted to walk away with a book. So that's where the Arroz con Pollo and Apple Pie book came out, Raising Multicultural Children. And that opened, again, a lot of doors. And, speaking to parents all the time, the idea of the bilingual children's book came out because there was a need for it. I didn't have bilingual children's book when my kids were growing up. I didn't have Spanish with. My sister would send them to me from Puerto Rico, or my friends from Mexico or from Spain. But the libraries, the bookstores, there was no Spanish books either. So there was a need for it. And I came up with this. Originally, the Yunito character was going to be a girl. And she was going to be Marisol, because that's my sister's name. So it was going to be Marisol's Adventures. But there is another author out there that has the Marisol girl as a character. And I didn't want to compete with that. I just felt like, that's her character. She started before I did. So maybe I was too generous, but that's okay. I'm one of 4. So I decided, well, the next best thing is my one brother. And my brother his name was Gilbert, but we call him Junito. when he was growing up. And I mean, for me, his whole life, he was Junito to me and to my sister. So it became Junito's Adventures. I knew I was going to write this first book first about the language. And then there's 2 other stories coming up after that that I've been working on. But it so happened that I lost my brother last year. And I am so excited that I can honor him with this series of Junito's Adventures. And Junito is a very mischievous, in a fun way, kind of boy. He is from Puerto Rican descent, but he lives in the United States somewhere. I don't say where. And both his parents speak Spanish at home, but now he is in 1st grade. And he comes back home and he doesn't want mommy or papi to talk to him in Spanish. So that's the story about Junito. And that was a long answer to your question, but I hope that's okay.
No, it was perfect, because it tells us how you got to this point of writing this book, and it also gives us some information about where you're going at a later point and how the story of Junito continues. And see, I'm already correcting my Spanish, so thank you.
You're good.
One of the things for me, as I read the book, I not only felt sad for Junito, but I could relate to him. So my full name, my first and middle name, are Zenzile Makiba. My name is South African. And it always was mispronounced. To this day, it's still mispronounced by people, and I have to stop and get them to pronounce it correctly. And it also came with a lot of questions. And I think as a kid, there was a time when that wasn't always as easy. Zenzi as an adult handles mispronounced names and clearing that up much differently than Zenzi as a child. And so you found yourself wishing, can I just have a plain old name? Can I be something else? Right. And so, but it really made me think about, as I read your book, how our names are so important. They're important to who we are, and they are important to our heritage. Can you tell us why it was important for you to tell this particular story about Junito?
Well, once I decided on the character, I knew that this was going to be the first story of the under the umbrella of Junito's Adventures. A boy that is comes from a Latino family, and that is being raised in an English dominant world, or an English speaking environment, and that he is going to feel, I don't want to be different. I want to be like my peers. So I don't want anyone to know that I speak another language fluently. And I think it all comes about because of his innocence and his lack of maturity. We all, when we're little, we just wanna fit in.
That's right.
We're in a new school, and we're trying to get to know all the kids around us. And so I think it was important to create this little boy, because I felt like in speaking to other parents, there was a lot of kids that were feeling the same, being in a different culture. And you know what, Sensi, it could be a French kid that is it could be an Italian kid, it could be an Irish kid. It doesn't really matter. It so happened that he is Latino, just because I felt like I wanted, there's a lot of Latino children in the United States, and I wanted them to see themselves. My kids never had books where they saw their 50% Latinidad or Hispanidad in the characters that they were reading in the books. So that was important to me to show that, and to end up with a boy that in the end would appreciate where he came from. We can't go anywhere and feel good about it unless we know where we came from. So it's, we have to go back. And I think that Junito story shows the kids that would read it, that, what, this is okay. It's okay that I have this culture, and now I am in this new culture, and I speak 2 languages fluently, and it's like his superpower.
Yeah.
because it is a superpower. And, the other thing that happens in the book, which is something that, you have a son, so you can relate to this, I'm sure. Oftentimes, and I had this quote recently in my Instagram, and it like so many comments because it's so true. Oftentimes, our kids need to hear things from other people. We can tell them 1,000 times,
They listen.
and
Yep.
they don't listen. But here comes the hero of the book is the teacher who
Yeah.
is not Latina, doesn't speak Spanish, and the teacher tells Junito, "I wish I was like you, and I wish I could speak in two languages." So, sometimes it's like I always tell parents, it takes a village to raise
Yeah.
a bilingual child, and teachers are part of that village in the
Yeah.
child's circle.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the teacher because in an earlier episode, we featured an author who is originally from Haiti and she spoke French Creole. When she moved to New York, and her book is based on her experience of moving to New York when she was in the 5th grade. And she walked into a classroom where the teacher introduced her, and the only thing she recognized in what the teacher said was her name because she did not speak English.
Hmm.
And her teacher did not create an environment for her where she felt welcomed.
Hmm.
But as you just mentioned, that Junito's teacher was the person that really became that ally and embraced him. And I think that it's so important that when we have a book like yours where the teacher is shown as an ally and creates an environment for Junito and makes it a teachable moment for the class, because there's a point at which he's bullied by the kids the minute they hear his last name and someone makes a crazy comment because they couldn't pronounce it and they thought it was funny to mock his last name. But the teacher made it a teachable moment for the class. So tell us a little bit about how you approach that piece of your book, and also how do you think parents and teachers can be better allies in the lives of multilingual and multicultural children and in the spaces where those children live?
Well, what's happening these days, Sensi, in my humble opinion, I think that it doesn't matter where we are at, where we live, we are all, I mean, not anymore in my case, but in your case, we are raising multicultural children wherever we are. There's lots
Mhm.
of schools nowadays are into the dual immersion
Mhm.
or Spanish as part of the curriculum. And so I think there's bilingual teachers. Now you can go and get a degree and be a bilingual teacher, Spanish teacher. So all that has created an opportunity for parents to really work closely together with the teachers. And one of the most important messages that I give the parents out there when they're starting, how do I do this? How do I raise a bilingual child? What the first thing I have to do? And my first tip for them is you need to, first of all, make the commitment with your partner or your spouse, whoever your partner is. And once you make that commitment, then you develop a family language plan. And inside that family language plan, the first thing is to make sure that everyone in the child's circle is in your plan. It's involved in
Hmm.
your plan. The teacher, the mom and dad, los abuelitos, grandparents, the relatives, the neighbors, everybody in the circle of the child should know that this is the way things are, because the parents need that support as well.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the child needs exposure to that language from all areas. And oftentimes the parents need the support, they need the teachers to be an ally, because the teacher can help them with things that they can do at home to practice that language and continue with that language learning. So it's very important to, regardless of whether it's language or not, I think that, teachers are the most important person in the child's life. I mean, they're with this teacher longer than they're with us sometimes when they're in school full time. So
Yeah.
working together with that person is so important, and it benefits the child. It's My kids, I was super involved in their kids' school. I even, and people that read my book, Raising Bilingual Children, they see that I share my story. They were in a parochial school. There was no Spanish around. And between these two parents and myself, we fought and fought, the board of directors, everyone involved, for 8 years to bring Spanish as part of the curriculum. Sensei it is still part of the curriculum today. It's been almost 15 years or whatever. I just got a text the other day telling, they're expanding the program. If you know of any teachers, please refer them to us. So, it goes to show you that parents can really be they're the best advocates for the kids, and being involved in their kids' education at, regardless of whether, sometimes parents don't know the language, and that's okay. You can still go and be a volunteer and help, even if you don't speak the language. And the best thing that happens is parents are the best example for the kids. So let's say I don't speak English. Well, guess what? If my child sees me doing something about learning English, it's going to be a lot easier for me to encourage them to learn Spanish if I'm being a good example with my English. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does.
So, and the teacher can help with that. He can give me things. Hey, teacher, I don't know. I mean, you can communicate with her and ask her to give you flashcards in English or something that you can practice as an adult at home, so your child can see you. And as the child grows older, maybe he can quiz you on the flashcards and the words and teach you some sentence. I mean, what kid doesn't like that?
What kid doesn't want to teach their parents?
Exactly.
Because they know everything, don't they?
They do. They're pretty smart.
One thing that you didn't detail in the book, but as a parent, I really considered, is that I wondered how Junito's parents felt when he was so opposed to speaking Spanish that he didn't even want them speaking to him in Spanish at home.
Yeah, two things I tell parents is, they're little. They, we are the ones guiding them. So you have to just take a deep breath and move on and not take it personal. I mean, you have to remember where they are. They are in an English dominant environment, and we need to make peace with that. And not criticize. Don't go out criticizing the English language. Don't go criticizing the American culture. That's not good for the kid.
That doesn't help.
No, it doesn't help at all, because guess what? Oftentimes they're born here. So they are Americans. We have to remember that. If the child was born in the El País, the country where you live, that is in the majority language out there, whether it is United States, French, France, Germany, wherever it is, you have to accept that. And the other thing that I tell parents is you have to lower your expectations. And, it's great to be consistent, because you want to be consistent. You make the commitment. So stick with it. Don't give up, but be flexible. Be flexible. So Junito comes in the house and the mom is like, she rolls her eyes. She talks to her friends, because that's what she did. She talks to her friends. They're all going through the same thing. And, you adjust. And at some point, Junito is 6 years old. He's young, but we can have simple conversations with our children about how important it is for us, that they speak this language. And, you talk about give them anecdotes or stories when you were growing up, and abuelito and abuelita, and, just very gentle. I came up with this term recently that I haven't shared with anyone yet. Well, I shared it on my post, but not verbally. But is naturally bilingual. And it's to combine the natural method of teaching a language, which is a lot of very gentle, and also respect, using the respect in your in the raising them with respect. So just understand the age that they are,
Mhm.
Lower your expectations. Every day you go back gently and you say, this is why it's important for mommy, whatever. And don't get upset, don't get frustrated, don't get uptight. Kids are very smart. And if they see
Yeah.
you getting all uptight about it, they're going to turn the other direction. So we want them in our direction, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
That makes a lot of sense.
so yeah, lower your expectations and be kind and gentle and use the natural method, and it's going to be okay. I mean, the more you keep at it, and especially now, there are so many bilingual resources out there for families that are in the same boat, and they all share information with each other now fast. You go into Facebook and you have all these communities, and you go into Instagram and the same thing, and you feel that support that moms like
Mhm.
me in my age group generation didn't have, because we didn't have any resources available.
Correct. But now there's so much at hand, and it's not just your textbooks, your traditional methods in classrooms. There are online applications. There are apps. We didn't have Duolingo growing up, but now Duolingo it's what they use in the schools. It's what adults use to increase their language skills. So there are a lot of resources that are now out there.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. Authored by Us is made possible by listeners like you. We thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
So we're back with Maritere Bellas. So because Junito tried to keep his heritage secret, he was essentially hiding himself. Do you think that we can be our authentic selves if we have to conceal or tuck away part of us that makes us feel sometimes like an other or different from other people? And what role do you see your work playing in allowing children like Junito to allow their light to shine, even sometimes when they feel that they are different?
Well, I'm a big believer that everything starts at home with mom and dad. And the way that mom and dad see themselves and see their culture and walk around with their head high because of their culture and where they came from, that's what the child is going to emulate. So that's the best way that I can explain it. And I think that through my books for children, using the character of a little boy that is Latino, and that when they read it, they can see themselves in it. I think that that's a tool and that resource that parents can use to show the kids, see, Junito looks like you. And and there are other books out there that are coming out, and a lot of Latina authors out there that are writing beautiful, all Latina and Latino authors that are writing bilingual children's books that are helping with that, helping the parents show their kids with the stories and the characters that it is great to be Latino or to be bicultural. But it starts at home. It starts at home. If mom and dad don't foster their culture or don't, preserve it, cultivate it, they don't do anything at home that promotes the culture they're from, the child is not going to appreciate it.
And then you also start to lose it. So the author I mentioned earlier, that's from Haiti. She said that she lost her French. So she spoke Haitian Creole and French. But when she moved to the US, because her parents, they spoke Haitian Creole at home, but they didn't speak a lot of French. She did more French in school when she was back in Haiti. She started to lose her French. And she said now as an adult, she is not fluent in French as she was as a child or could have been had she maintained it. And so continuing to speak that native language or that language that is a part of your family while you are speaking another language is really important because it continues the existence of that language in your family.
Exactly.
And it also allows that culture to continue to be at the forefront.
Exactly. Exactly. A good example of that is my husband. Both mom and dad were Greek descent, first generation Greek. So he's second generation. They spoke Greek at their house. The grandmother she came to the United States from Greece when she was like maybe 20 some years old. She lived to be 80, never learned English. So all the communication with her was in Greek. And then he left the house at 18 after graduating, ended up from Chicago to Miami to Southern California, and lost a lot of the Greek. We chose Spanish and English because there was not a lot of Greek language exposure near us, like there wasn't Spanish either. So we had to choose between the two languages, between the three. We chose Spanish and English because we felt like anywhere in the world that we would drop them, they would be able to communicate themselves either English or Spanish. Unless they were near places that spoke Greek, I don't think that would have worked. So, but yeah, you have to continue. I mean, I learned French as an adult. I was 18. Languages came really easy to me. I chose that as my bachelor's degree in languages, and I learned French as an adult, and I don't get to speak it very much. So unless I'm there in either Paris or somewhere in France, and after a while it all comes back and you can have conversations, but I don't get to speak it very often. So, but when it comes to culture, it's just important to foster that. And, nowadays, I just feel like there's no excuse not to raise a bilingual child, especially if there's two languages inside the house, because there's a lot of help out there, and there's a lot of opportunities to feel motivated and encouraged. And there's on top of all that, which is very important to everyone. I mean, this country, I think, in the United States, it's taken longer to accept that raising a bilingual child is important. And it took the scientific proof. And now we have that. So, truth be told, here in Southern California, I know, because I can't speak for the rest of the country, although I did interview a few other schools in other parts of the country when I was writing my Raising Bilingual Children book. And there, because of all these studies and results, there's a very large monolingual speaking population, parents that are now raising bilingual children because they want their kids to be ahead, and they want those advantages when they are looking for jobs and all that. So, but it took a scientific proof. In Europe, all the kids speak all these other languages.
Yeah. And so my father is also bilingual. I have several people in my family who are bilingual Spanish speaking. Two of my uncles were actually Spanish instructors. But there was a point at which when my dad taught, and I, mentioned this before on our podcast, that he taught students who were native Spanish speakers in an English speaking school, and they were placed in what would probably now be referred to as a remedial education class, because they were not native English speakers. And so they were treated as though they were not academically capable, when really what the challenge was that they didn't speak the language that was native to the place where they were residing, but not that they were any less capable academically. And I think just probably growing up, and so in the last 20 years, I think when I was in school, we took classes like Spanish and French, but they were always a part of what was called the foreign language department. And I think back on it now, they were not the native language, but when you say foreign, it makes it sound alien.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I don't think they use that word anymore, or at least I hope they don't, but
no. So now at my son's school, they're called specials and so forth. But, just the concept of hearing foreign language, it makes you sound completely like another. And that there's something with this language that that is other, that is not natural. It's not native, but not only that is not native, it's not natural, or someone that speaks that language does not belong. How do we change that? And I know we change that with calling it something else, but I think there's also still a sentiment to this day that when someone speaks something other than the native language, that something's wrong with them, that they need to be bullied, or they need to be looked at differently, or they need to be questioned. So how do we change that for children today? How do we change that for the next generation? Just how do we make a change in how we receive different languages into our community, into our society?
It goes back to mom and dad. It goes back to raising that child to appreciate all the little other kids in his classroom that might look different. They might have a different skin color. They might have a different culture, and it just starts at home. I truly believe that we need to teach our children to appreciate other people's differences and respect other people's differences, and you know that also, just Luisito doesn't look like me. No, he doesn't look like you, but let me show you. I mean, it's so easy to now go in the computer and have a conversation with your child and show the world to the child. You know what I'm saying? And but I think it starts with mom and dad. I mean, if we are at home talking bad about our neighbor that happens to be Asian, and oh my God, those Asians, da 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 da. Well, what is the child going to learn? He's going to go to school.
Right.
He's going to see an Asian child, and he's going to be prejudiced about that child. So we need to stop the prejudices inside the house, and
Yes.
teach our kids that the world does not revolve around the way he looks only. There's all these other colors and cultures out there. That what an amazing thing for you, Luisito, that in your classroom you have a Black friend, you have an Asian friend, you have a white friend, you have a Latino friend, because that's what the world is. That's the real world. That's the real world. So it starts at home. So I hope that parents don't get mad at me, but that's just the way I feel. I mean, that's the way we raised our children. Sensi, I feel like because my kids grew up with 3 cultures and 2 languages, they are today the people they are. My children don't see color, they don't see gender, they don't see disabled, they don't see, everybody's the same to them. They just care about the person. I meet you, I want to get to know you without any prejudices around. And I think that's our goal as parents, I think, to raise that kind of child. I mean, they're not perfect. No one is perfect. But in that respect of being respectful to others, that gives my husband and I such pride that that's the way that our children are. And I honestly believe that it was because of their upbringing. The other thing that happened to us, because we didn't have any resources, was all of a sudden we became friends with a group of friends that were all from different Latin American countries. So Peruvian, Mexico, Argentina. To this day, these are our friends, Mexicans, Mexican Americans. And that was groups. So all the kids were around the same age, and they would, play in Spanish, and the parents would, meet. We would meet at least twice a month, and have the little Argentinian asados and all that. It was great. To this day, we do that. And thank God for those moms that we were supportive of each other. But guess what happened? The children were exposed to all those cultures.
That's right.
And they appreciate that. They love their food. They love their music. So, it really starts at home. It starts at home.
Wow. You're absolutely correct. And one of the things that's really important for us, for our team at Authored by Us, is it's really celebrating diversity. And people tend to look at diversity as just the colors of our skin. And it's not. It's our color. It's the where we're from. It's the languages that we speak. All of these things that make us different.
Tradition,
And so,
custom, everything.
That's right. That's right. And so even with you and I, we may not have the same shade of skin, but something we have in common is that we're both moms, and we find a point of commonality in that, and how we have an exchange about what it's like to parent our children. You and I are both from the Caribbean, 2 US territories.
Exactly.
And so that is something when, if you're talking with someone who is a native to California or a native to Colorado, that makes us different. But there are also things that we have in common. And you are correct. It does start in the home. We have to be able to have conversations with our children. It may not always be easy, but we
Right.
have to begin to have those conversations. I was saying to a teacher yesterday, we were talking about just a series of events that have happened we'll just take in the last year with the pandemic, and we can talk about racial injustice with racial violence. We can talk about marginalization of women. And so we were having a conversation about just various things that have transpired. And she mentioned she teaches fourth graders. And she mentioned that some of the students in her class were asking her, well, why is it that some people treat Black people this way? Or, at asking her those questions and looking to her as the teacher for answers. And I said to her, they also need to go home and have that conversation with their parents,
Absolutely.
because the teacher can provide some perspective. And yes, our children spend a lot of time with their teachers in school, but we also, as you said, we have to bring it home. What we show at home, what we model at home, what we teach at home, that's the foundation that our kids start with before they go out into the world, before they go out to school.
Do you know what I always think whenever I hear about, another shooting, and well, whether it happens to be a black with a white or a white with the black, I first thing that I always think is, how did that kid grow up to be the person that he is? With no judgment, because it's not a judgment feeling at all. It's a sad feeling that I feel,
Mhm.
because I feel like maybe if that young man would have grown up in a home where mom and dad had talked to them about diversity and inclusion, and to embrace different cultures, maybe it wouldn't have you know gotten to a point where he's going out there killing people and stuff like that. So I just think that there are conversations that we need to have with our children, and like I say, you don't have to give them a whole, it doesn't have to be an in-depth conversation until he's maybe 13 or 14 and they can understand more. I mean, you talk to kids at their maturity
At their
level,
level.
but there are now books that show children of different colors. I mean, be the advocate of anti-racism in your, teach your kids. You want to teach your kid, Google, where do I get this information? How do I talk to my kids about racism? There's a lot of information out there today that there wasn't when my kids were growing up. We just did it by intuition and by the way I grew up in the island. I mean, in Puerto Rico, you can have blue eye, blonde, dark skin, brown, I
That's
mean,
right.
white with blue eyes. There's all kinds of colors there.
Yeah.
And that's what my children grew up with, seeing all that.
Yeah.
And in Ohio, where my husband grew up, there was a lot of Greeks, and there was people from other countries as well. So it's a conversation that we need to have at home.
I agree. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Authored by Us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review so you never miss an episode. Now back to the show with your host, Zenzi Hodge.
We are back with Maritere Bellas. So, Mari, in 2017, Hurricanes Irma and Maria devastated the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. And not only were homes destroyed, families were displaced, and in too many situations, lives were lost. But you wrote a book called Luisito's Island. La Isla de Luisito to honor the experience during that time. Can you tell us about Luisito's Island?
I'm so glad you asked. I love that book. So I was asked to write this book by this organization. It's a literacy program that is on hold at the moment, but they are hopefully going to be back in service. And it's called readconmigo.org. And they were providing families for about 4 years. They had like 200,000 families in their list, on their mailing list, of free subscription for Spanish and bilingual books. So it was awesome. And they asked me to write a book. And I started thinking about all the families that were leaving Puerto Rico because of the hurricane. And I was saying in my head, if parents are devastated by this move, the little kids have to feel like, leaving their friends behind, their house behind, everything they knew behind. It has to be hard for them. So I came up with the story. And in the story, Luisito starts a new school. His friends are little animals. So it's kind of like somewhat of a fable. And he's very sad. And these animals come to him and ask him why he is sad. And he starts talking to him about his home and what he misses. So in every page, there is a landmark in the island that I mentioned, and he tells them, what it is about and why he misses that place and all that. And so the children that read, I had two things in mind. One, I wanted the children for Puerto Rico to feel like I was honoring how they felt and reminding them of all the beautiful things that are still in the island and that hopefully they will go back to one day. And the other part of that, I wanted children that were not Puerto Rican to get to know the island a little bit better. So I picked different things from, the piragüero, which is a guy that makes ice cones with a little with a strawberry or different flavors. So I have a picture of that. The observatory, which unfortunately is no longer there anymore. The Bahía phosphorescent bay that sparkles up at night. So there's like 3 or 4 or 5 different things. And the whole story is about that, about his friends to get to know the island. And it was kind of like my little love letter to the children of Puerto Rico.
Oh. So, you can see me smiling. Guests can't see me smiling, but I'm really smiling because, that's another thing that you and I have in common. So when I wrote my children's book, it featured a little boy in St. Thomas. And so every scene was something here that we actually see. And it featured our landmarks and other places of note or people that you would see on a day through some St. Thomas. But we also featured our snow cone, which we call Fracos here. Right. And so as you mentioned that in your book, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have a Fraco scene in your book. So.
Yeah, El Piragüero. Boy, do I miss those. Those are so good.
Oh man. That's definitely a treat to be able to have on a hot day, which we typically have here in the Caribbean.
Yes.
So you've mentioned Luisito, you've mentioned Junito, and I know you have a couple of other books. So can you tell us where we can find not just I Have a Secret, Tengo un Secreto, but all of your books?
My website. I mean, they're the books, like I Have a Secret, Tengo un Secreto, and the book that I think I mentioned, I just translated. It's called, it's for toddlers, and it's called 100 First Words for Toddlers, and it's the Spanish version of it. And so that one, Amazon and all the online, obviously. But if people go to my website, maritererodriguezbellas.com, they will find all my books there and where to get them.
And as always, listeners, you can check our Authored by Us bookshelf and you will be able to find Mari's book, Tengo un Secreto, I Have a Secret. And there will be a link to her website so that you can see all of her books and make your purchases there.
Thank you.
Now, I know the pandemic has really changed how we engage as authors. Has it changed how we engage with just people in our lives? But can you tell us some of the things that you're doing to connect with others and to share Junito's story with young audiences around the world?
Well, I'm actually trying to do some book readings, virtually. I had a virtual reading recently for a school real close to where I live, and I'm trying to be able to, schedule some more of that with the library here in Los Angeles and other. I've been doing some book talks on Instagram with different accounts that promote reading and promote books. So that's been really important and super fun to do. And being invited to podcasts like yours helps a lot because I get to promote my books, and all of a sudden people follow me, and in a small way I can contribute to whatever their language journey is, which is it's my passion and the language and the culture. So I offer a lot of information, resources, and tools in my everyday Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, in my social media. Every Monday, I have for the last several months, almost a year now, I've had Instagram Live that always features someone that can be a resource for parents in this journey. So they can walk when now that now the Instagram Live has IGTV. They live there and people can watch them whenever they want if they don't watch them live. So so that has been my way to kind of help and contribute to the families that are stuck at home or that were stuck at home. Now everybody's kind of venturing out, but I don't know. Things are pretty bad in Puerto Rico at the moment, so they're in a little bit of a lockdown. Not completely, but I was supposed to be there next week, and we decided to postpone it. So I'm hoping that everyone stays healthy and we can get back to doing in-person book talks and book readings,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we've had to find different ways to really connect and to engage. But even with the downside of not being able to do what we typically do, I think we found some creative ways to really reach out. And whether it's IGTV or whether it's doing more podcasts, I think that this has been a time for us as creatives, whether we are authors or we're podcasters, whatever our creative media may be, for us to really get out there and talk to our audiences and find new people that are ready to engage with us and with our content. So there's always that silver lining, I guess.
Yes, I agree. And you know what? I was talking to eminence in bilingual education and bilingual parenting. His name is Adam Beck. He also is an author and has written books to help parents raise bilingual children. And we agree that this time, the time that our children are young, it's so fast. It happens so fast that we have been able to be with our kids for the last year and spend quality time together doing things that maybe we weren't able to do because we both go out the door and work elsewhere during the day, and then we come back and that's the time we have with our kids. But it's been a little different, and I hope parents see it that way, that yes, it's been hairy and crazy and trying to be the teacher and the parent, but someday I hope we're going to look back and say, I had that extra time with my kids.
Yes. And that's a blessing. Now, I read that you always wanted to write, but you didn't pursue it until you became a mom. So tell us about why it took motherhood to inspire you to pursue writing. And then also tell us what you think inspires the next generation of writers who are writing stories either about a multilingual or a multicultural experience or targeting that multilingual, multicultural audience?
Well, first in my case, you know, I always wanted to be a mom. That was like my thing. I think when my youngest brother was born, he was 4, I became a mom immediately. You know, that was my baby. So, and you know, fast forward, we got married and we waited 5 years to have a child. So I was so ready to be a mom, and I got really involved in my children's lives and their education. And I was everything from room mom to fundraising chair to PTA president, you name it. I acquired this knowledge of raising funds and all that stuff. But so I always wanted to continue writing, and I would go back to my manuscripts and my things and add things here and there. But I decided to do it as when my daughter entered high school, because I could see that my time, I needed to find my own self, like my life away from being a mom, and because they were going to be out of the house for in a little while, and I wanted to go back and do my own thing. So that's when I went back to writing, and I really enjoyed it, and in a serious way. I was writing when my kids were growing up in the column that I had, and that kind of like was also sparking the that flame that about my writing. But then when I started writing the books, I let go of the column because it was just a little too much. I couldn't do all of it. So, but I think that the authors today, you included, we all get to inspire the next generation. And if we are writing those books that are, diverse and that are inclusive, that's what they're going to believe. I have a story to tell. I'm going to write this, and I tell that to all the aspiring writers out there. We all have a story to tell, all of us, and we all want to read everyone's story. So if you really want to write and become an author, then start writing that story, and put it out there.
I like that. We all have a story to tell, and that is true. Now, because you have written books for children, I have to ask you, what was the book that had the most impact on you when you were a child or when you were growing up?
The Little Prince.
Wow.
Yeah, I still remember that. In fact, someone was bringing that up the other day, and I'm like, yeah, that's my favorite book too. I love that book. It's funny. I don't remember books being such a big thing when I was growing up. I mean, I'm talking to you about over 60 years ago. But there were the classics like Little Prince that were around, So anyway, that was my favorite book.
Oh, wow.
Of course, he was a little boy too, so my character. So I guess.
So Junito is the next evolution of the Little Prince.
I guess so. I hope so.
Mari, it was such a pleasure talking with you on today's episode. I really enjoyed hearing about Junito. I enjoyed hearing your story. And yes, I am biased. I enjoy talking with someone who is so close to St. Thomas that I can probably look outside and see your home. So that made me feel really happy. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. You are just a wonderful, wonderful person, and I love talking to you. So anytime, here to support your work in any way. So just let's keep connected, and let's keep supporting each other.
Well, thank you. So as we get ready to close the cover on this bookshelf gem, I would like to thank our author, Maritere Bellas, for joining us on this episode of Authored by Us. This episode would not be possible without you, our wonderful listeners who join us every week. We invite you to come back next week as we introduce a new author sharing their story. Until next time, happy reading.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Authored by Us. Every author has a story to tell, and we enjoy bringing their stories to you each week. Whether you are listening as a young reader or are sharing this podcast with the young readers in your life, we are delighted to celebrate these stories inspired by diversity and shared in the voice of their authors. Follow us on social media at Authored by Us and subscribe to our podcast using your favorite podcast app. That way you never miss an episode. Have a gem on your bookshelf that we should have on ours? Visit us online at authoredbyus.com and let us know. Until next time, happy reading.